Hello, Lorehoundians. I'm Elysia, your host for this one-shot dive into the new Dev Patel action joint Monkey Man.
And I'm David, here to rip open my chest and reveal the power of Hanuman, the Monkey Man. Actually, he's not a monkey man, but we'll talk about that later in the show.
We'll start with our spoiler-free hot takes for those of you still deciding whether this film is for you, then dive into the story of the production, which had more twists than an M. Night Shyamalan movie, before our full breakdown of the film itself and the world it takes place in.
Finally, we're going to check in with our community to see what others are feeling about the film. It's not too late to get feedback in. If you've got your own thoughts, please do send us feedback, as we love to hear your thoughts and reactions.
Just send it to Lorehounds at thelorehounds.com or head to the contact page on the website and use the form or record us a voicemail that we can drop right into the podcast, and we'll share and discuss your feedback in a future episode.
If you are interested in supporting the Lorehounds community, join us on Supercast or Patreon. You can also join the conversation on our Discord and listen to all of our other affiliate podcasts. We've got a new Fallout podcast coming online. Anthony and Steve just dropped a new podcast introducing their new season. Elysia, you've got stuff going on for Beacon 23 in June. And then, of course, we have Marilyn, who's doing Rings and Rituals, doing an analysis of season 1 of Rings of Power and talking about all the rituals that are there. We'll talk about more of that stuff at the end of the podcast, but links for all of that stuff and all the other feeds, they're in the show notes for this episode.
But today we're here to talk about Monkey Man, and I insisted upon this heavily because I just really love this movie. There's been a lot of buzz. It's been kind of a down year for box office in general. That's obviously no news after COVID, but this one did okay in its opening weekend. It came in second place after Godzilla Kong is still at first place with about 30 million this past weekend, which,
did you see it?
Yeah, I saw it. It's fun. And that movie obviously has a lot more money to make back. This one, we're 5 days in now. It's been open for 5 days in the US and definitely not everywhere around the world. It's made 13 million so far, which is 11 million in the US and then 2.5 million abroad. So you can see it's not open in as many places. Everyone's definitely going to watch what India's going to do with the release.
Right, exactly.
But Jordan Peele, he had Universal pay only 10 million for this. So it's already made back that budget. Shooting budget, we don't really know what it was, but it was extremely low. We'll talk about that more. And it's getting good reviews. It's got an 88% on Rotten Tomato, 7.4 on IMDb, 93% on Google reviews, 72% on Metacritic, which is notoriously tough. So
yeah, anything above 60, sort of 60%ish across the board is, a worthwhile film to devote your time to.
Yeah. I think it's much. The 93% on Google is more where I'm at.
I got it.
So this was made by Dev Patel, who obviously I think most people listening probably know who he is. He's been in so many things, playing so many different type of characters. But this is him. He's, Indian background, British raised, and grew up a huge action film fan. So this is him sort of reclaiming the action genre and his own heritage a bit. So he cites Enter the Dragon and The Raid as major influences.
Nice, very good.
But also Bollywood for the colorful, frenetic production design, and Korean film for like the layering of meaning that he's going for.
Very cool.
David, what's your background with action films?
Watched a lot of action films in my day as a Gen X kid who grew up in the post-World War II, post-Vietnam era. We got a lot of that stuff fed to us on television, and of course in our movies, and especially the mid to late 80s action genre, the Die Hards and the Predators and Lethal Weapon and all that kind of stuff. So I've got a lot of action movie in my blood, as it were.
Yeah.
And I do love a good action flick, and I could see a lot of DNA of a lot of action films in this movie. And you could really tell that Dev is a student of the genre, because there's a lot of inspiration inside of the different set pieces, the different chase scenes and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I actually did a recent string of action binges,
Okay.
but I have to admit, action's not usually my genre. And in fact, my recent string of action binges kind of solidified that for me. Like, I really enjoyed the Fast Saga more than I expected.
That is not within my genre, but anyway.
But I really like, don't hate me, y'all, but I didn't really enjoy the John Wick films.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
I found the fighting too choreographed, and like the
Mm-hmm.
plots and characters are a bit too tropey and superficial for me. So this, like, when I saw this film, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, now this is what gets me into action. Like something where it's so visceral, and it's also playing on so many different layers, like touching on things that I did and didn't know, and yeah, really towing the line in some
Right.
ways. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think for me, well, are we getting into our general hot takes now? Should I
Yeah,
start to
sure, please.
wax poet?
Yeah, well, we're still in the
Well,
spoiler free section for listeners. We'll let you know
right.
when we start with spoilers.
So for me, I'm glad I saw it on the big screen. I wish I'd sat back a little bit further since a lot of the action is like the camera is like right in up close on a lot of things. So I have mixed feelings about this film. I have on the one hand, my appreciation for the fact that it's been made and that it was made by Dev and that he went through all of the things that he needed to get this film on the screen. And then, I believe, as you said, Jordan came in and swooped it up and made sure it got actually produced, which is, great. And, we talked about this in the Oscars with Cord Jefferson and during his Oscar speech for, what was it, Best Adapted Screenplay for, what
Yeah,
was I'm
for
blanking, sorry.
American Fiction.
Thank you, American Fiction. That he's like, instead of making $200 million films, make more $10 million or $15 or $20 million films, right? And so I think this sort of falls within there. The budget on this was pretty low, relatively speaking, to a normal action movie. So that said, I'm like really glad that it got made. I'm glad that Dev is able to bring his personal take on on the genre and opening up mythology in that's a very located in place and time kind of mythology, and then really opening it up to a broader audience. I love all of that. There are some places where I do feel that the movie falls down a little bit, and it's probably in the editing and in the post-production.
Okay.
For me, the movie was about half an hour too long.
Okay.
And it just seemed to go on. And it definitely feels like certain pieces got dropped. There's certain things in near the final battle where there's some elements that you're like, wait, why is the camera locking in on this when I don't remember anything about how this got developed, like why they're using this particular thing, and some other characters that show up and you're like, wait, where did they come from, or what's going on there? So it felt to me that maybe this thing, and you're gonna, I believe, got some notes on the production for
Right.
the thing how this film actually got made. So I'm worried that it got a little stepped on in post-production, and maybe that's where some of the faults lie. And I don't put that necessarily at the feet of Dev. I think if I step back and look at the movie itself, there was the chapter one, sort of the beginning stages of it, and there was a moment where I was locked in and I was like, okay, this movie has my attention. I'm really excited. And then there's a later moment that happens where I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm starting to see, now I'm sort of slipped out of it. And then the whole back half, I was kind of working to stay engaged and involved.
Okay.
That said, and again, and I think the movie was trying to do a lot. There was a lot to this movie. There's a lot of stuff about Monkey Man in the fighting ring stuff, which is where we see a lot of the trailers and clips. But then there's the bigger backstory there, and going into the character's past and dealing with the future. To me, the movie has a lot of heart. The movie has a lot of first time director, like, oh, I want to do it all, and there's all my influences are coming out, and that's a normal thing. And then once that's sort of out, I'm really excited to see what Dev Patel can do now. Now that he's on the big screen and now that he has proven that he can direct and he can choreograph, because the fight scenes in this are pretty extraordinary. The camera work is exceptional. Sometimes when you're close in on those fight scenes, it can be very disorienting, and you can lose, like, where am I? Who's punching who? Like, what,
Right.
In this, I never felt disoriented. I did feel overwhelmed by the end of the movie, like from a sort of a stimulus thing.
Sensory,
And yeah, from a sensory standpoint.
That's the
And that,
Bollywood in it, I guess.
yeah, that's true. That could be part of it. And it's similar to what I haven't watched all the John Wick films, and I don't know that I've ever watched a John Wick film from beginning to end. But there's a point for me if I drop in on a John Wick film, I'm like, okay, this is like eating too much rich cake. At some point, you're just like, oh, I can't eat anymore.
For me, it's like eating too much stale cake. Sorry, John Wick fans.
Okay.
I love Keanu Reeves. I really wanted to like them. No worries.
But you know what I mean? You're so at some point, you're just so desensitized.
Oh yeah, it's just, why do you care in that film? Which is where it's very different for me with this one. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And at some point, I just was like, okay, more action, more action, more action. I'm like, oh, okay, dial it down a little bit, but whatever. That's a little bit mean. That said, I thought there was a great movie inside of here. I thought there was a great first time out director inside of here. Visually stunning. I love the mythology. The plot for me was, when you talk about stale, it's like, okay, it's a basic plot. I get it. At some point, I thought, oh, this is going to be really different, and then it was like, no, it's kind of the same. So I appreciate this film for what it's doing and what it's trying to be, and given that Dev's first time out, and then the other hand, the movie was at some levels for me an average action film. So mixed feelings about it, but I'm excited for Dev because I really want to see what he does next, and he's got my attention.
Okay.
So what about you?
Well, never fear, Monkey Man film fans. I
don't hate it. I enjoyed it. I'm glad I went to see it, but
Yeah. No, I'm way higher on this film. When I came out of the theater, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars in Letterboxd, and then I just couldn't stop thinking about it, so I went back and bumped that up to 5 stars. So it's one of 2 5-star films of the year for me so far.
Wow.
Right after Dune.
Huge.
And yeah, so indeed, this is Dev Patel's first film, as a director, and then he ended up, like, he we'll talk about it more, but he didn't necessarily want to take the reins. He didn't think he was going to take the reins as much as he did.
Interesting. Okay.
And he ended up getting kind of pulled into that because it really is his baby. And so I think one thing that I love about this is it already looks like the work of an auteur. And by that, I mean someone who has a unique and well-defined voice and style. You can see that here. I can look at this and be like, okay, if he does another action film, here are some things that I'm going to expect from it that are uniquely Dev Patel. He defined himself that quickly. So that's one thing. I think, it's maybe the most real feeling on-screen fighting ever. And so in interviews, apparently that is something he's going for. I'm like, yeah, well, that you can see that. With, he talks about being just a caged animal clawing their way out, literally biting their way out. Sorry, gore warning.
Right. This film, if Lorehounds listeners know, we have a thing called the Pukila scale where we measure relative violence, and this one spikes the scale for sure. There's a lot of brutal action in it. So if you like fight scenes, this is a good movie to see just for the choreography. Sorry, carry
absolutely.
on.
No, yeah, some iconic fight scenes. I understand the complaints that there's too much packed into one film, but that's actually kind of exactly, at least part of what I like about it personally. It adds more weight to action film fare, which just gets me more emotionally invested, and so I care more about the fights. And yeah, in general, I love a film with heart. It's hard for me to resist a good underdog story with a determined and resourceful hero. And just it layers on top of that, like these mythic references, cultural, political commentary, memorable characters. I can't help but think of The Green Knight, oddly, which is not an action film, does star Dev Patel, not written, directed, etc. by him. But that was there's some in the dreaminess and surrealness of this film. I see some of that. And The Green Knight is one that I went into really wanting to like it because I love Dev Patel, but also because I'm really into Arthurian legend. And I just ended up not liking it. And all the stuff I hope to get from that, I actually got in this other film.
Oh, interesting. I'm curious, in terms of Dev Patel and his filmography, did you see Lion?
Yes. It's a good one.
Yeah, that one really that one grabbed me by the heart and ripped it out of my chest for sure.
Yeah, that's a great
So,
one.
and I detected a little bit of that in this movie too. There's a couple of scenes I'm like, oh, that kind of feels like Lion,
Yeah.
and
Well,
so
you can see the people he went back to consult with about this. He asked some people to direct. He asked for advice from, and it's the filmmakers that he worked with before on films like Lion, Chappie,
right.
things like that. Yeah.
Was he in Chappie?
Yeah.
Oh wow, what was his? Do you remember what the role
Yeah. I
was?
don't. I'm guessing he was on the police side. I don't really. I only know that he's. I love Chappie. I haven't
Yeah,
watched it
yeah.
since it came out though. So I remember the other side of things more, but I know that he was in Chappie because that's how, for instance, the character Tiger, the ring announcer in this film,
Okay, right.
he's
Yeah.
a South African actor
Right. Yep.
who, yeah, he knows through Neil Blomkamp and Chappie.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I forget that actor's name, but yeah, it was like, oh
Uh,
yeah, that guy.
yeah, Charlton Copley.
Yeah, he's great. He was in District 9 and Elysium. So yeah,
Yeah, so he
I've
was
enjoyed
the
him in
he
the
was the
past.
lead in District 9, the one who, sorry, spoiler alert, but the one who transforms.
Yeah, that's right. He was great. I forgot that was actually him. I knew he was in that, but wow. Yeah. Good
Yeah.
movie, District 9. Good
Yeah,
movie.
exactly. Excellent movie. And yeah, I like that Monkey Man doesn't tie things in a neat bow, actually. So I've
Mm.
been thinking about the characters ever since.
Yeah, there's a question that I want to ask you that we can't get into until we get
Yeah.
past the spoiler section. So,
All right. So we also have a good take from Shane but that also includes spoilers. So let's get into your question and that's feedback from Shane right after a quick break. Okay, so we're back. David, I have to ask, what was the spoilery question that you wanted to ask?
I really thought that Dev was setting up the character for an IP franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And given the wounds that he sustained at the end and that we kind of see him collapse, I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, wait a minute. What happened? Like why aren't you limping off, into the sunset so that we can see a Monkey Man 2 or, this a John Wick style franchise?" And so I was really surprised that they didn't leave that door open a little bit more obviously for me. I mean, there's
Mm.
things that they could totally do. I'm not saying that they
Yeah.
can't
I
do
mean,
some
yeah, he
hand waving.
collapsed. We didn't see his funeral or
Exactly.
something.
Right. Yeah. We
Yeah.
didn't see his body going down into a coffin or
Right.
burned or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cremated.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I liked that they left that ambiguity. I
mhm.
am of mixed feelings whether I want to have this become a franchise or just have
Okay.
this as a standalone thing and have him do other things. I think I trust him that he wouldn't do a sequel unless he felt there was really something to say with it, that it's
Okay.
not just, and that's what I would hope for, right?
Right. Just an empty sequel just to chase the dollars as opposed to
Hmm.
actually making a statement. And I think that's going back to the values of this film. I think if I just walked out sort of cynically going, oh, it's another revenge action movie, with a lot of fight scene action. Okay, whatever. And it's like this movie and it's like that movie. Fine. But then knowing what we know about it a little bit and knowing what Dev is trying to do, he is trying to say something, which is an auteuristic sort
Right.
of point of view about what he's doing or yeah. So his motivation, I guess, is what, we're trying to divine his motivations here. And that gives me that for me gives me a different criteria by which I'm grading the film on in a way, because
Hmm.
he is trying to say something. He's trying to talk about his past. He's trying to talk about his love for action films. And you can see that in this. And so that does put the movie in a different category. I'm relating to the movie differently if otherwise. If this
Right.
was just a studio driven project
Hmm.
with not a single credited writer, director,
Right.
person, then I would be very cynical about this. But because it's Dev and Dev putting himself forward and saying, I think he's the co-writer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's probably got an executive producer credit on there, or, producer credit on there. as
Well,
well
yeah,
as
he is like
all
I mean,
over
of
it.
course, yeah. I guess Jordan Peele is the executive producer now, but
Right.
this
Yeah.
movie, yeah. Well, actually, Shane, he sent us in his hot takes, but includes spoilers, and he talks a little bit about the whole production scenario, which is one of the biggest stories about the film, and we'll expand upon that afterwards.
Sounds good.
Let's hear what Shane has to say.
Hey, Lorehounds, Shane back again. Thanks for having me. This time to talk about Dev Patel's directorial debut, Monkey Man. Super pumped to talk about it. Before I get into the actual details of the film, I kind of want to highlight its kind of crazy production. Started out during COVID. It's a COVID movie, if you can't tell. Dev wanted to film it in India, ended up filming it on an island in Indonesia. I'm pretty sure the entire cast, extras, everyone was quarantined. So it was a big, kind of a small production, but a big production in the sense where everyone had to follow these rules. It was a tight production. Netflix acquired it for $30 million outright. This was like in 2021, which is kind of a long time ago. Netflix kind of afraid of the underlining political message in the film. That kind of spooks them a bit. Netflix then goes ahead and sells it to Universal for $10 million. So Netflix, again, kind of took a loss there, $20 million loss. But Jordan Peele kind of convinces Universal to purchase this movie because he wanted to see it in theaters. Netflix, obviously, they're going to put it right into streaming. Jordan Peele felt it was more of a theater movie. And then here we are, 2024, and it's released. I think it made $10 million in its weekend box office. But yeah, I think just first of all, big hats off to Jordan Peele for picking this out like that, having that eye. I mean, obviously, Dev Patel, well-known actor, but it's his first directorial debut. He also wrote and produced it. So just hats off to Jordan Peele to kind of put that out there and taking Dev Patel under his wing. I mean, I also read, you can kind of see this in the film. Also, spoiler alert, we're going to start talking spoilers. You can kind of see this in the movie. Dev Patel initially wanted Neil Blomkamp to direct this, which is funny because now that I think about it, I can see a lot of the influences. Like it has a lot of similarities to District 9. The way the camera moves, Charlie Copley is in both of these movies, and even the underlining message of both films is pretty similar, now that I think about it. But I can see why he went to Neil Blomkamp. Neil said, "No, Dev, this is too close to your heart. You're so into this. You should direct this." And then he went ahead and directed, and I think he did a really good job. Obviously, his first time. I think for some people, the camera there is a lot of shaky cam, but I think it's done pretty well. Obviously, you can see that this film was edited quite a bit. You can see Jordan Peele, I think, and Universal kind of went in and definitely gave Dev some notes there. I can see that in the film, but I think the final finished product is great. The editing was done to make the story better and kind of track better. I kind of like how he does tell the narrative. You kind of keep wanting to find out more about Dev's character. Bobby, I guess we can call him Bobby. I don't think that's his real name, but we call him Bobby or Kid. The more we learn about him, you kind of, as the movie goes on, you learn more and more about his history and kind of why he's on this path of revenge. And there are some comps to John Wick, but honestly, I don't think it's a lot like John Wick. John Wick, again, gun battles. There's not many gunfights in this movie. This is much more of a martial arts movie, a lot of hand-to-hand combat. Some incredible scenes. I mean, again, spoiler alert, there's a scene where he bites a guy's nose and then he goes back and then bites the nose clean off. Like he bites him a first time and then they continue fighting and then he goes again and bites his nose off. Awesome. My theater went wild. There's another scene, he stabs a guy in the neck and then they're fighting, their hands are tied up like grappling. And so what does he do? He bites the knife and pushes it further into the guy's neck. Unbelievable. I think it kind of reminded me of Saving Private Ryan when the guy gets stabbed slowly in the stomach. And then the third act, which is relentless. I like the third act a lot. I think the first two acts are good as well, but the third act is kind of where the movie, it just had me like kind of chills a little bit there, just how good the action is and how well it's directed. There's even some like POV Hardcore Henry like shots. It was interesting.
Oh, yes.
He took a lot of risks for being a first-time director, which, that's awesome. And then the subject matter. Obviously, it's a martial arts film. It's a revenge movie. He's trying to get revenge on something that happened to his mother. A terrible thing, obviously. and he's trying to get revenge. But there's a lot more behind it. I think it's a lot more unique. It's a lot about the caste system in India, and just he's trying to say a lot in this movie. And I can see why Netflix kind of dropped it, because this might not play very well in India, especially considering the Prime Minister of India looks a bit like the bad guy in this movie. They look a lot alike. And that was clearly done on purpose. So it is interesting. There is definitely a message behind this film. And it definitely spooked Netflix. I mean, and good on Universal for taking it on and putting this in theaters. I think it's a good message, obviously. And there's a great representation in this film. Transgender in India, which I didn't know a lot about at all. So it's great representation there. It's just a good overall movie. I think for his first movie, it's impressive. Coming out of the theater, I was like floating. It's a great theater experience. My theater was super into it, sold out. I'm hoping this makes more money. I want it to make more money. Dev, whatever he does next, I'll be there first in line. But yeah, again, I just really, really good movie. A lot of good action, good acting. There's just some cool scenes. Like there's a really cool scene where someone gets pickpocketed and the camera kind of follows along the kid after he pickpocketed this person, and you see the purse and how it keeps going to different people in the community. But again, yeah, I'm excited to hear you guys talk about it. I hope people go and see it. And I'm a little late to my showing of Civil War, so I got to go to that. But it's a great time out here for the movies, 2024. But I think Monkey Man was a good start. I think other than Dune 2 and Monkey Man, I've been kind of having a good time there. I think those are my two top films so far I've seen this year. And then I'm headed out to Civil War now. I heard La Chimera is supposed to be good as well, and The Beast. So it's good to be a moviegoer at this time. Yeah, just kudos to Dev Patel. Great movie. Hope everyone sees it. And thanks for having me on.
And then, yes, Shane messaged me afterwards to add, forgot to mention the inspired soundtrack. It's so good.
Shane mentioned Hardcore Henry, and this was in my notes I forgot to drop earlier in the action DNA of the show. Hardcore Henry comes out of a music video, 2013. There's a song called Bad Motherfucker by the Biting Elbows, which is a Russian indie kind of hardcore band. And they made this move. It's like a mini movie, but it's set to the music of the song about some sort of spy organization. There's a MacGuffin that everybody's chasing that can actually sort of teleport you around. And to film it, they developed this face shield mask that had 2 GoPro cameras mounted on it. So you get a first-person point of view. Go find the video on YouTube. It is great. It's a great song. It's great first-person shooter action. The cinematography, the action, everything about it is flawless. The ending is great as well. As it's a fun twist, but it really launched that genre and style of mimicking first-person shooter, out of the video games. And I don't know that anybody's really done it well since then. And then that director then made a 2015 film called Hardcore Henry, which came out it's got mixed reviews, but it was a lower budget. It wasn't a big studio thing. It was more of an indie production. So I've never actually seen it, but I do love the Biting Elbows Bad Motherfucker video. Go check it out. Anyway.
Yeah, you shared it on Discord, and I went and watched it. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. So. Don't let the title card video image fool you.
Yeah.
There's a lot more going on.
And as for the other films that Shane mentioned, so he did report back after Civil War. For anyone, I know a lot of people are like really undecided about whether they want to see it.
I'm biting my fingers, talking about biting elbows and biting my fingernails for that movie. It's coming out at a weird time. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that movie.
But Shane said apparently he's not claiming it's an easy watch. He said it's very visceral and something he thought a lot about afterwards. So okay. I'm going to go see it in a couple weeks. We'll see. Right. I can definitely second his recommendation of La Chimera, which is an Italian movie about a bad boy archaeologist who, they're like a kind of mafia of archaeology, but he's British. Anyway, that's my number 5 film of the year so far.
Oh, wow.
I have the same top 2 as Shane. And I didn't hear about The Beast yet, and I looked it up. I was like, I don't know this French film. And I was like, oh, it's a French-Canadian film. So definitely up my alley. So I added it to my list. It's a sci-fi romantic drama set in 1903, loosely based on a Henry James novel. So I'm definitely looking out for that. So thanks for the movie, Rex Shane. And yeah, he brings up a lot of excellent points about the total package of this film. There's actually even more to the drama, which we're going to get into. Just one quick correction now is that I don't think Netflix lost any money on this. Basically, they just kind of canceled the deal, and then it went back to the company, and then they started shopping it around, and Jordan Peele saw it.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, it's hard to then talk about the financial success of a movie based on the fact that there's a shooting budget and then there's the acquisition budget and the marketing and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So the numbers can get really murky really fast.
Well,
anyway.
yeah, nobody really knows where the shooting budget was. And I guess, I mean, so basically, rather than somebody losing money on it, we don't know exactly how much Dev Patel and his backers spent on this.
Sure.
But they just basically made 20 million less upfront because Netflix was promising 30.
And that was back in the era when Netflix was making 60, 70, 80 movies a year, kind of. They were throwing money at everything. And it's wild to hear that this was a lockdown film. Like they actually locked themselves in and made this.
Yeah. So get into the production notes, this film went through a lot. And it is good insight into how things go in the industry in general. Like Hugh Howey is always saying that, never expect any project to work out because it's just everything can and will go wrong along the way. And it takes so much longer than you expect. This film was announced in 2018, so 6 years ago. So that means that they've been working on it even longer, writing it and everything. And basically the reason that Dev said he wanted to make it was he said that there's two problems with modern action films. One is that so many of them are empty of deeper meaning. And I'm taking his words here: pathos, culture, politics, and religion. Mm-hmm. And so he calls this a Trojan horse action film or gateway drug, where he's like, come for the fights, stay to think about stuff. And yeah, and the other problem is that he was only seeing people like him in like sidekick or hacker roles, and not just because he's Indian, but because he doesn't look like The Rock. He's a tall, skinny
He's more
guy.
Wiry and slim. Yeah.
And so this kid, as the part is credited, since they don't really give him a name in the film, is a scrappy character.
Right.
I love, by the way, that when he said, "Oh, my name is Bobby," and then they just have the camera pan past the bleach, but it doesn't focus on it. No. It's just like, if you catch it, you catch it. If you don't, then
there's a shot later on too where they do have the bleach can much more in focus and clear. So
when he's actually using it to clean. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So if you missed it the first time, you got it the second time.
Right. But yeah, as Shane was saying, he tried to bring in other writers and directors, but everyone saw that it was his baby. So he ended up co-writing it, as you said, David, he worked with his friend who's a director-writer, Paul Argunahuela, and they brought in a ringer, John Coley, he's best known for Master and Commander and Happy Feet, but he had worked with Dev Patel in Hotel Mumbai, so that they have someone who's, won the awards who can help them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. That's always a good thing to have, a steady hand on the tiller.
Yeah, exactly. And as Shane said, Neil Blomkamp basically said, "No, I can't direct this. You have to direct this yourself."
Nah, dude, this is your movie, right? You got to step out.
He's like, I've never even been to India, and this, every shot of this inside and out.
Have you traveled to India at all?
No, not yet. I've been to Indonesia where they filmed.
Okay.
But
I've been to Sri Lanka. I haven't been to to India proper, but I did feel immersed in the world immediately.
Absolutely.
Without, 100% wholly immersed, like just dunked me in the pool.
And this was supposed to be filmed in Mumbai.
Okay.
And the original plot synopsis also said that kid was just getting out of jail, but apparently they dropped that later in reshoots and editing, which I can understand. Like, it explains the why now aspect, because that was one question I had, like, why at this point in his life is he going for this revenge? But I can see why it was dropped, given that we've already talked about the movie tackling a lot. But yeah, the film was almost canceled because it was supposed to film in Mumbai, and then COVID hit, and then, India got slammed with it. and the backers were backing out. And Dev Patel's like, no, please, 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 I will make this work. I will make this work. So he basically found a hotel that was now abandoned on the island of Batam in Indonesia, which is right next to Singapore.
Okay.
And so they just took over an empty hotel and created a bubble with 500 people, the cast and crew together.
Oof, could you imagine the testing protocols to make sure everybody's clear coming into that?
They had to be there for 2 weeks. So even people who he got to come in for just, a couple days of filming had to quarantine for 2 weeks before they could do that. So he lost a lot of cast and, lost all of the backgrounds. And of course, they've been prepping different locations for months.
Yeah.
So now they have to improvise on the spot.
Well, again, kudos to the production then, because there's no way I didn't notice that at all. I noticed plot devices and character things that were edited that was weird, but from a visual style, no way would I have ever known that this was the case. That's incredible.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's all sorts of crazy stuff happened during filming. Like he broke his hand during the first fight.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they couldn't get really popular medical care because of the whole COVID situation and the quarantine. So he just kind of had someone put a pin in it and he kept filming. But you'll notice that he does a lot of one-handed choreo for the rest of the film.
I had no idea there either.
Yeah.
Again, they masked it really well. I remember at one point there was a bandage on his hand, but that was story. I don't know if that was real.
Right. No, they just worked it into the story. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
I mean, someone can absolutely break their hand for real in that story.
Yeah.
And of course the budget just got smaller and smaller. So they only had a few breakaway tables. So they were gluing tables back together between takes.
Oh my Lord.
He said he'd call cut and people were scrambling. So a lot of these details come from a Reddit Q&A that he gave. And this is a direct quote from him from that Q&A. He said, "The borders closed also, so I couldn't bring in lots of supporting characters. I ended up having to put every tailor, lighting guy, accountant, etc. in front of the camera. Speaking of cameras, most of our equipment broke and we couldn't fly new stuff.
Wow.
So we literally shot stuff on my mobile phone, GoPros. When a crane broke, we ended up creating this camera rig from rope, which I termed the pendulum cam, which swings over a large crowd of people and then detaches, and the operators run through the crowd whilst it was rolling."
Wait, this is craziness. I had no idea about any of this. This totally changes my criticisms of the film. I mean, post-production editing aside in the story, but just I may, when this comes out on video on demand or on streaming, I'm definitely going to watch it again to see if I can find these different kinds of pay attention to the way that they're doing the production, because that's cool as hell. Bringing in all of your production teams and all of these extras and stuff. Because the film, I questioned a number of times, how did he film this? Like the whole purse snatching scene and the way that the pocketbook made its rounds. I was like, what? That's incredible. Like, how did he film this in India? And how do you shut down neighborhoods and areas like this to actually do this kind of work? I was really impressed on that scale, that this is a manufactured reality. That even blows my mind even more.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes limitations, or often limitations, that's where
100%.
Creativity is born from. And
absolutely.
So you commented about the way that the fights are filmed. Well, he found out that one of the stuntmen always wanted to be a cameraman. So he's like, well, great, now's your chance, because the stuntman could actually move and roll with the fighters.
Amazing.
And so the stuntman understood better how to film these action scenes than someone who hadn't been in the little action themselves. So
that's wild. That's incredible. And that's great, because Dev now so it's a passion project. So he's putting his emotional and sort of psychological energy into it, right? Fighting through the studio systems and keeping his baby alive. But then as a director, all the things that he just had to learn and invent in the moment. I mean, you don't wish it on people, but man, I'm sure glad he had that experience, because now as a director,
trial by fire. Yeah,
absolutely. He's going to have a vision. He's going to have, he's gone through a crucible, and that's going to forge his vision in a new way, and his ability to film and work with actors, because he's an actor, and work with stunt coordinators and working with the DPs and the set people. And, you have to make bonds with these people to get them in front of the camera. So I'm even more impressed with this. Again, I didn't love the plot, but man, I'm sure in love with the production.
Yeah. So after all of that was over, then in November of 2021 is when Netflix agreed to buy it for 30 million. So
Okay.
yay, that's a high for them. They ended up doing some reshoots in India, which is pretty normal, especially given what happened.
Right.
So they did get to film some of it, at least in Mumbai. And then Patel says the film kept evolving and then, quote unquote, snapped back to its truest intention. He said some of his favorite moments that he directed were left on the cutting room floor, but it was really, I think, because of trying to work with Netflix to make a version that they are willing to distribute. And then Jordan Peele coming back in and being like, nah, let's go back to the heart of it. Indeed, there was a lot of post-editing. I don't have the problems with it that you do, but I understand where it comes from.
The fireworks really confused me, or I know in the temple they said that they had been fighters, but then they just show up and they're completely combat armed and ready to go. So,
well, but they had whole training sequences.
Just him though, not
no,
anybody
that's not
else.
True. That's not true because they started to show him training other people.
It still didn't. It didn't land for me. Didn't land for me. Yeah,
right.
I missed. I was like, wait, who are these? I mean, I get it because there was a setup line, but it didn't. It didn't.
I wonder
carry for me.
if on a second viewing, if more of that would come together.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, so Netflix, they backed out not once but twice.
Okay. Wow,
because,
twice. Okay.
Yeah, and Dev Patel, he's not like nasty about it. He's just like, well, they didn't realize what they were getting. They were sold John Wick in Mumbai, and this is more than that.
Right. Right.
But it's interesting that they were on the other side of things with Nimona, where they were the savior in that case. But yeah, I guess they make a lot of money in India, and they don't want to anger that audience.
Sure. Yep.
So the talent agency CAA started shopping the film around, and it seemed dead again. But then Jordan Peele saw it, and then immediately watched it 2 more times. And so his production company, which is coincidentally called Monkey Paw Productions.
Oh, perfect. Right.
Stepped in. Indeed, he said we need to see it on a big screen, and he got Universal to buy it for 10 million and distribute it. Had its world premiere at South by Southwest on March 11th, and it got a standing ovation. And if you want to like have your heart warmed, Google the speech that a tearful Dev Patel gave afterwards, and it won the audience award at South by Southwest. So that's where the buzz, I think, really kicked into high gear, even though it started when we got that trailer in January, and then just more and more people are being sold on the story of it before we even got a chance to see it.
Right.
So we'll lightly recap the plot, and I'm kind of borrowing from Wikipedia and tweaking here, and then we're going to pause to discuss the stories and themes behind the action. So we'll start with Kid's childhood, which is where we get the layer of mythology laid down. So in a forest village in India, Kid lives with his mother Neela, who inspires him with tales of Hanuman. Baba Shakti, a ruthless spiritual guru in the nearby city of Yatana, sends Ranga Singh, the corrupt police chief, to force out the villagers and acquire their land. The village is massacred, but Neela is able to hide Kid. Rana finds and kills Neela as Kid witnesses her death, leaving his hands badly scarred as the village is burned to the ground. So, David, you dove into the Hanuman story.
A little bit. When I was younger than I am now, long ago, I was really taken with Hindu mythology, particularly the story called the Mahabharata. There was a production of the Mahabharata that came out that was like a play that was traveling around, and then it got turned into a video. The director Peter Brook filmed it, and it was a multi-part series, and then it was shortened and lengthened depending on where you got it and how you got it, but it was absolutely incredible and just sort of lit me on fire. And so I read a lot of I tried to read a bunch of stuff, and I was very interested. I am by no means a scholar nor a devotee, so I've just got a little bit of knowledge. There's a couple of big Indian epic stories. There's the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. Yeah. And then there are various Puranas, which are more short stories and more encapsulated morality tales. The Ramayana is about 15 times larger than the Odyssey.
Wow.
And the Mahabharata is about 8 times larger than the Ramayana. So the Mahabharata is approximately 125 times larger than the Odyssey. So really incredible stuff. They were As with a lot of Hindu mythology, because it's polytheistic religion, and given the different human population changes and influxes on the subcontinent in that area, a lot of stuff gets mixed and layered over. So it really does take a degree to be able to pull those different threads apart to see where the different influences and how things are maybe combined in later mythology. So what we might be looking at now, if we go back, we can see, we can unpack it, and we can see how something got sort of compressed together or fused together where they were separate things in an earlier iteration. Anyway, the character of Hanuman is a member of a race called the Vanara. I believe I'm doing the syllables right there. They're not monkey people. Let's get that straight. They are a race of semi-divine beings who seem to be able, in some stories, seem to be able to shapeshift. And I believe even Hanuman in the Ramayana shapeshifts. I've never read the Ramayana. I've only read the translation
I've read
of the
summaries of
Mahabharata.
it because I wanted to get some background before going to see an Indonesian dance on Bali.
Okay.
And it actually also featured a Hanuman story, but a different one than the one in this film.
Right. And so these stories are epic, and there's lots of side quests and sub stories and pieces and parts of it are taken out. So if you've ever heard of the Bhagavad Gita, that's actually a small section of the Mahabharata. That's a very small conversation between two characters on the edge of battle, on the sort of eve before these two big families start fighting. And that in itself is a massive, dense piece of work. And that's only a small part of the larger story. So anyway, Hanuman, who is this Vanara character, gets there's the story. The Ramayana story is basically a prince named Rama. His wife Sita is captured by the demon king Ravana, and Rama and Hanuman fall in together, and Hanuman is the hero who is able to rescue Sita in the end. He's the catalyst for Rama's trying to, get his wife back, but it's Hanuman who's actually able to sort of lead the whole effort to get it, get the job done. The story is broken up into sort of 7 big books or chapters, if you want to think about it. And it just details their entire epic of coming together and Sita being captured, and then them going on these different quests, and then having the final epic battle. And so what you can take is that there's a lot of morality play stuff in here. Oh, these different characteristics, and then why you would, this is what heroism looks like, or this is what devotion looks like. And so out of this story, and in Hanuman's also in the Mahabharata a bit, and then a bunch of these other short stories, these Puranas, he's depicted in a lot of different forms. Hanuman you can see him often because he does have that monkey-shaped head. Oftentimes he's depicted as ripping open his chest.
Right.
And then you also see him a lot of times with this big mace, so a big stick with a big sort of ball on the end. That's a gada. That's his main weapon. Hanuman as a character, as a modern mythos deity, what's the word I'm looking for? Something that people aspire to. 2 of his principal characteristics or attributes are strength and power, Shakti, and Bhakti, which is devotion and worship. So oftentimes Hanuman is somebody that you would think of or worship in your way to, if you're really devoted to something, you're really seeking excellence for something. So that's why he's often the god of wrestlers or martial artists, because you're perfecting your form and you're seeking excellence. And through all that pain and suffering that you sort of go through in your training, you come out on the other side in this crucible. I think maybe this is literally Dev Patel's crucible of as a film, learning Shakti and Bhakti, right? Because he persevered.
But it's also interesting that this so-called spiritual guru is called Baba Shakti and not Bhakti. So he's going for strength and power rather than devotion and worship.
Exactly. And so the thing about the Hanuman ripping open his chest at the end of the adventure, spoilers, for the Ramayana, he's given a gift, and it's like, wow, there's a whole bunch of different stories and angles onto this story. And then some of the servants and other people around, they're like, oh, well, you got this gift, but, how do we know that you're really devoted? What's really goes? And he goes, look, and he rips open his chest. And in some cases, it's the name of Rama that's on his bones, or he rips open his chest and it's Sita and Rama in his heart, or it's their names written in his heart. It's different variations, different forms. But basically, he's showing that in his inner self, to his very core of being, written literally on his bones, are the people that he pledged to devote and protect. So the whole point is that that Hanuman is a character that's often revered as also the underdog, the fighter, the protector of the people. So people will take that on when they're fighting against a bigger power that's stronger than them. And so I think in this story, Dev really takes that idea, and he sets up a big bad guy in in Baba Shakti and the police chief, and throwing in all of the political and power related things, using the trans community. And so it's a very Hanuman story, right? He has to find within himself what his purpose is. And obviously through this marginalized community, identifying with his own. So it all works very well, mythologically speaking. And it's a perfect Hanuman story. And I think you said that Dev has even talked about that, or there's some conversation about that this is a mythology that's important to him personally.
Right. Yeah. So he, growing up, apparently his uncle would tell him these old stories, and this was his favorite. And he always thought growing up that Superman was copied off of Hanuman.
Very nice.
Because of there's the famous Superman graphic with him, opening to show his Superman sign, and also the flying thing, of course.
Right.
But yeah, the story that's the focus of this film is where he talks about Hanuman thinks the sun is a mango and flies up and swallows it, and it causes chaos, and he is punished, which is an interesting Icarus parallel to pull from Greek mythology. The whole reaching for the sun and
reaching for something
burned.
beyond. Yeah, right.
But yeah, he said that he sees Hanuman and his band of honor as an underdog team up. So he definitely based his film on that. And then
100%.
Obviously on the other side, you have the Demon King and his army.
Right.
And actually, if you go back to and look up the first trailer that was released for this film in January, it really lays out the parallels between the mythology and the plot of this film.
Okay.
And I enjoy just the way that they interpreted it visually. Like there's, I copied into the notes that only David and I can see, but there's, for instance, in one of the bar fights, he's standing on a bar, and the way that the bar is backlit, it looks like the sun in this golden glow with circular. And, you have the monkey man obviously fighting. And
very nice. I didn't pick up on that particular angle. It was a beautiful shot. I remember the shot, but I didn't realize that it was connected like that. Very good. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And so he stacked this film with Bollywood and Tollywood stars. We're going to name drop them as we go, though I apologize. We do not have personal expertise in their careers. Can't really talk about their past films. But if you enjoyed them in this, definitely look up what else they've done. The entire film takes place in a fictional city of Yatana, so just FYI, not a real place, but it is an amalgamation in terms of location of Batam, Indonesia, and Mumbai. And yeah, the entire film is a very clear commentary on Hindu nationalism and Modi, the current leader of India. So it's unlikely to be shown in its current form in India. There's a release date there pending where they decide how to handle it. But one thing that we know is if you look at the first trailer, the people who are the Modi stand-in party were originally carrying orange or saffron signs, which is the color of the Indian Hindu Nationalist Party.
Right.
And they were changed to red in the final film.
Right.
So that's already like backing off a little bit, like, okay, but come on. We all know that's
sure.
Modi.
But then I think there's a line to... I think there's a place to have a conversation about that. If it's too on the nose, then where's the creativity, as opposed to if it's just sort of illusionary or hinting at, then you can live in fantasy, but then draw the message on your own, as opposed to being told that this is because then you start to political messaging, when is it propaganda and when is it education, or when is it
I mean,
entertainment? It's a
honestly,
question.
I think it's always propaganda, but it's just that we object to propaganda that speaks against our personal values.
Sure. And then that gets into the one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist
Right,
question.
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. But I would prefer, personally, prefer when it's a little bit oblique a reference, because then I'm allowed to draw my own conclusion. And then I feel like I'm doing the work of the film as opposed to having the film just tell me what to think. So,
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people just have no idea and walk out of this
sure.
film without thinking anything about Indian politics because they just
Right.
don't know.
And it tells a
Right.
story, an epic story of the rich and the powerful dispossessing using the mob and the crowd, and then and ultimately dispossessing them of their possessions for their own glory and riches. So straightforward.
Yeah.
That's a pretty straightforward bad guy setup, right?
Yeah. Overall, there's like definite commentary on the dangers of the marriage of church, or this case, temple and state. So we have like religious leaders, they turn to the elite, they are alienated from the people they claim to care for. They're putting the needs of the majority behind their own personal needs, yearning for power. I feel like that's a more universal concern thing to think about that can be applied in
Absolutely.
all around the
Absolutely.
world.
Yep.
And of course, he eventually gets his revenge on both Rana Singh, which is the policeman played by Sikandar Kher, and Baba Shakti, the religious leader, played by Makarand Deshpande. One of my favorite things about the film, though, is in this flashback part, which is just the way they showed the familiar intimacy with the child and mother in these flashbacks. Just the way the camera shows, just he traces the line on her face while they're laying in bed, and
Right.
just the way he touches her hand when they're walking through the forest just shows their affection and closeness. And I was thinking that this is actually the film that not Dune 2, but this is the film that got me to understand what Villeneuve meant by filmmaking over dialogue to tell stories.
Right. Yes. This line of like, yeah, dialogue doesn't mean anything in a movie. When I'm paraphrasing Villeneuve. Yeah, that's interesting. He used a lot of the flashback. Again, I kind of, once we got past a certain point, I was like, oh, okay, I get this. This is, I know the setup here, right? It's the police chief is going to be the guy who did his mother in, and that's all pretty straightforward. In this way, this movie reminded me a little bit of the original Conan movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, because there's a cult leader, and the cult leader's bad guys did his family in and all that kind of stuff. But it's a pretty known storyline. So yeah, with this whole Villeneuve thing with the dialogue and is it too much or whatever, one of the things I did appreciate about Dev's filmmaking here is that the flashbacks, while they set up a pretty straightforward revenge thing, like we know that the police chief is going to be the one who did his village in and did his mother in, fair enough, but the use of the flashback as a tool of memory or a device of memory, there are flashbacks where you need sort of explicit work where it's actually telling you a whole bunch of stuff. But I do love a flashback that's just a touch of a memory, just a grace of a moment where it gives you that vibe or that feeling rather than giving you all the exposition dump. Well, back in 20 years ago, this is what happened, as opposed to, yeah, just a mother's caress with a child, or, scenes of dappled forest sunlight as they're, running through. I did appreciate that, because it tells me a little bit more about Dev's passion and what he's going for. And so I like the use of a memory flashback as opposed to an expositional flashback.
Right. Okay, fair.
Even though we get both, right? Because we do
Right.
get straight exposition flashback in this.
Right. No, yeah, eventually they show exactly what happened to her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think actually they didn't even need to show that, but although I guess that was to drive up our rage. So we're like, kill him, get that guy.
Exactly.
And my one minor critique is that sometimes the camera work outside of this flashback scenario felt a little too claustrophobic, where I'm like, just back off the camera a little bit.
Agreed. And I think that's where I got in my sensory overload, was like, oh my goodness, right? It's because there was so much close in work. It was a little exhausting towards the end, which is why I kind of wish I had sat further back in the theater, because then I could process a little bit better, as opposed to being so so close in with the camera, which is so close in.
Right, exactly. So yeah, cutting back to the present day, revealing his life as a fighter, Kid helps his friend Alfonso win a large bet on a bout in exchange for promotion. As a waiter, Kid is able to access the VIP floor to reach Rana. Among Queenie's prostitutes is Sita, who advises Kid to give up working in such
her
a
name is
place.
Sita?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. All right. So missed that detail. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Buying a gun, Kid trains a stray dog to carry the weapon past security and spikes Rana's cocaine with cleaning powder in order to confront him in the bathroom. He attempts to shoot Rana, but is foiled and forced to fight his way out of the building, fleeing in Alfonso's supercharged tuk-tuk. Kid crashes. I loved Alfonso.
It was cute. Yeah.
Kid crashes and is arrested, but escapes through the city, nearly killed by an axe-wielding pimp. Kid is shot by the police during a rooftop chase and falls into a pond.
Whew. Yeah. So this is where the movie, I slipped into the movie and he really had me. And I was really excited during the whole buildup to his getting close to the police chief. Things were a little bit opaque. The stakes felt very high, the setup. And once I realized that, oh, wait, he's trying to get in as a job. Well, why is he trying to get into the job? Like, he really led me along very nicely along the breadcrumbs of keeping things mysterious, even though I could see a footstep or two ahead, but not the whole path. But then it was in the fight scene where I was like, oh, okay, this seems to be a revenge movie, and this is, what's going on. And then it just kept going and going, and that's where I started to pull back a little bit. But up until the chase scene, I was like, wow, this is some really cool filmmaking that's going on here.
Yeah, okay. I was just getting more and more swept up in it as it went.
Sure, yeah.
But I appreciate about this early, a lot of people say that the beginning, they got more into it at the end because the beginning is a slower build. But I appreciated that it took the time to show him losing because
yes.
allegory that it's basically
right.
a job to just take it and fall so the favorites can win.
Yeah.
So
that was an interesting setup, and then it came back later, but so it was interesting. But then when he was fighting the police chief for the first time and he was not winning, I was like, oh, that's interesting, because he's used to losing, and it's not that he was intentionally losing in that moment. He just wasn't at the next level. He wasn't at boss fight level yet. He still had to do his hero's journey to discover purpose. That's what was missing in his fight, was purpose.
It does remind me of a video game where, a boss comes in, like the lower level boss comes in, and then you lose, but you get like an escape.
Yes.
And then later on you confront them and defeat them.
Exactly. It was very much that progression. Yep.
But we see his cleverness, though, because he arranged this whole purse theft so that he could profit from it. And then I also appreciated the allegory of, lying about the source of his burned palms. We don't know when he does it, but he says that these were chemical burns. And so he's willing to do all the dirty work. But so he's using the scar of his hatred as his ticket to revenge.
And this is where this particular scene is when the film really grabbed me, and when I really felt Dev's passion, both as the showrunner in retrospect, but also as an actor in the moment. I really was like, oh, wow, this is really interesting.
Yeah.
And I thought the setup, and I was all during the build up to him confronting the police chief for that first time. My heart was racing, and I was really, on the near edge of my seat going, okay, my God, I have no idea what's going to happen. The stakes are really high here.
Yeah, and we talked about Sharlto Copley playing Tiger. I think he brought so much energy to this part of the film too. He's 100%. One of the people who came in and quarantined for 2 weeks just to do like 2 days of shooting.
Good on him.
I'll go sit on an island in Indonesia for 2 weeks. That's fine.
I completely forgot that he's the main character in District 9, because he's such a different character in that, and as opposed to this, where he's very smarmy.
But so Sharlto Copley apparently is really good at improvising. So he was just like riffing with Dev.
Perfect. Well, that makes it, because that's the MC role, has to be a person who can improvise, right? And so, good stuff.
Yeah, he was perfect for it. And then Sita was played by Sobita Tulipala, who,
Mm-hmm.
what do we think is the nature of their relationship? There's been a lot of discussion and reactions to the films about whether this is an unrealized romance. I thought that maybe she reminded him of his mom. Maybe it's
Sure.
both, and there's a
Mhm.
Freudian thing going on. Obviously, we've noticed that it's the same name. And Sita
Right.
from
the
the
Ramayana
stories.
story. Yeah.
Yeah, in the Ramayana, she's not with Hanuman, so that's not a romance. She's with somebody
Right.
else.
That should follow through if you're going, the mythology. And so is it an inspired mythology story? And is he
Yeah,
just playing
sure.
with it? That's a good question. This is a part where I was confused by it.
Mhm.
And I think this has less to do with the editing, the post-production editing per se, as it did to the fact that this is a packed plot. We have the
Mhm.
fighter backstory, we have the village backstory, we have the big bad guy backstories, we have the brother of the woman who runs the restaurant, we have this love interest, we have the temple, we have the chase scene, we have his evolution into a Hanuman-esque character, we have the whole final confrontations. So this particular interaction with her confused me because was she just an ally and another person who's being having their agency taken away and being sort of forced into this position. I enjoyed their interaction, and I love the fact that she's clocking the fact that he's got a gun and that he's offering the drugs right away. All of these little things, she's cluing in on it, and they have an alliance, and then she just disappears for the rest of the plot until the very end, kind of. And I was like, huh, that was weird.
I didn't find that she disappeared at any point. I thought
During the whole temple, the chase to the temple, like she was just absent. So I
Yeah,
didn't
but
know
why
when
would
she came
Yeah.
back at the
Mhm.
end. I didn't understand what her purpose then
Okay.
was.
I mean, I
So
didn't miss her at any point during the plot. I didn't feel like she was missing anywhere where she should be. The one
sure,
character where I did feel that way about was Alfonso, played
the
by
brother.
Peter Bosch.
Yes.
Well, yeah, not the friend.
Was he? Well, no, he's the brother of the woman who's the head of the hotel.
Is he?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what
I
I
missed that.
understood. Yeah, that
Oh, I
was my
thought
okay.
she
Well, that's
was. I
headcanon.
thought he was just her lackey.
No, I thought they were. I'm pretty sure they're related because why would she keep him around? So I'm pretty
Because
sure
he's
that
the
was the
kind of guy
brother.
who gets stuff done.
Yeah. No, I think
Yeah.
he's the screw up little brother situation.
Oh, okay, because then he's rather complicit in taking her down.
Yes, he is, which
Yeah.
is why it gives his character a little bit more motivation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think she's a lackey, but he's a lackey, but I don't know.
Okay. Anyway,
I'll have to, definitely going to go back and watch this as soon as I can. So going to pay attention. But yeah, I think Kid did him dirty, first of all, just leaving him like that.
yeah.
And I guess there's no friends in revenge, but I did want more of him throughout because he was one of my favorite things as sort of a comic relief, but also as an ally.
Yeah, and then an unlikely buddy cop, quote unquote, situation where unlikely duo where his path then Alfonso's path then wraps back around and he supports the primary character in the triumph of the good, right? And he doesn't care. He's not a Sam character necessarily to a Frodo, but he is integral in the journey of the hero ultimately triumphing. And he just goes away at parts.
Yeah, exactly. And that's definitely got to be an editing thing, which I think is a shame. But
and it's weird because then we get a couple of clip scenes of him doing some stuff and running and hiding a little bit, but then it never resolves into anything. It never gives us.
Well, then he's there
deeper.
At the end. I mean, that's the payoff, is that he gets to see. Maybe he got another tip again, like the kid goes to put all the money on Dev Patel on the kid
on the fight. Yep.
Yeah, and maybe he was given that tip as well because he's also just very happy to see Monkey Man in the ring finally winning. He obviously knows who it is at this point.
With one kick.
Yeah. And I loved, by the way, as a villain, I thought Queenie, who played by Ashwini Kalsakar, I thought she was a great villain. Sadly realistic, but mostly just like really selfish, more selfish than evil, I would say, per se.
Sure.
Or just showing the evilness of selfishness.
Right.
And then the undersung hero, the dog. I need to know, did the dog find a nice home at the temple after this?
Another dropped character, the big setup, and then just poop gone. I did like the twist that he was using it to smuggle. That was clever. But then after that, I just like, oh, okay, what happened to that? He just used the dog.
My headcanon is the dog lives at the temple now.
Okay, fair enough. That's he's the temple's mascot. Yeah.
Yeah. But I loved overall in this section, like the mix of highbrow and lowbrow settings. Like they even showed two different brothels, you know, a wealthy brothel versus a poor one.
Low class.
And I appreciate decisions like to always position the elites physically above others in the film space. So they're always at the top of towers and things like that.
VIP is always at the top of the building. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean, this film is definitely meant to be a commentary on the caste system.
Sure. And even outside of a structured cultural historical caste system, just in terms of economic disparity. I mean, we even have a huge economic disparity in Western worlds where
exactly.
The elite rich and the average working class person are getting further and further apart.
Yeah. I think that even if you don't know about the caste system, you're going to take away, just like even if you don't know about Modi, or you're going to take away general ideas of what the statements of what the film is speaking out against, what kind of behavior, because it is sadly so universal.
Indeed.
Yeah. And that brings us to the temple respite and the training montage. So we've had him fall gravely wounded into a pond, and he's rescued by Alpha, the keeper of a local temple of Ardhanarishvara, whose transgender community is being targeted by Baba's growing political movement. Alpha guides Kid through a hallucinogenic experience to confront the trauma of his mother's death, encouraging him to train himself in combat with a newfound purpose. When their sanctuary is threatened, Kid returns to fight at Tiger's temple again, placing a large bet on himself. Winning over Alfonso in the crowd, Kid emerges victorious with enough money to save Alpha's temple. So, first of all, I have to appreciate, I always think of now what Marilyn said about how you need a moment of rest in these stories, like the Bombadil.
Right. That makes sense.
This was definitely that.
Yeah, the downbeat and then the training montage. And I guess the musician who is playing the tablas was somebody who is a famous musician in their own right. I don't recognize them, but actually used to play with Ravi Shankar.
Yeah, so his name is Zakir Hussain, and he's apparently like the most famous tabla maestro in real life. So Dev Patel kind of begged and pleaded for him to do this, and then especially once it was like, and by the way, we're only going to film for a few days with you, but you have to quarantine for 2 weeks in Indonesia.
So it was a fun little device for the training montage. So I enjoyed that a little bit.
Yeah. So the Ardhanarishvara, which is literally means the half female lords. You know, when Kid wakes up in this temple and sees this form of the Hindu deity Shiva combined with his consort Parvati, I think that this was one of my favorite, because this is real insight into actual Indian culture that a lot of the rest of the world might not know. So this is a real version of the deity who people worship, and, you know, half devotion, half destruction. And Alpha, who's played by male actor Vipin Sharma, is playing a Hijra. And a Hijra, this is a group of, you might call them transgender, sometimes intersex or eunuch people who live in communities that follow a kinship system known as the Guru Kela system. So gurus or the teachers, they pass learning and property on to students, Kela, who are treated as basically their own offspring.
Oh, interesting.
And the Hijra are officially recognized as a third gender throughout Southeast Asia. So, and this identity goes back to ancient Hinduism. So you find references in the Kama Sutra and the Ramayana, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I always find it funny when here we are, the height of, modern human history, and we know lots of things, and we've completely decided not to pay attention to all of the historical markers and reference information that there, in terms of of gender identity and physical sex, that is more going on than what we think. So this whole lockdown of a binary, and it's like, no, wait a minute. There's a whole bunch. The Hindu culture was tens of thousands of years long. It is an enormously long history that we have we're a blip currently relative to that, let alone the Greeks, the Romans, the Japanese, the Native American communities. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that it just, I don't know. I just my mind boggles at the fact that there's a lot more that's going on than we shouldn't be so arrogant in our knowledge, and we should be open to the fact that there's a lot more going on.
Well, and it's somewhat discouraging we've talked about in terms of with Shogun, with the Japanese culture, where homosexuality used to just be widely accepted, and then suddenly there's a regression in that. And you've seen that to a certain extent in Southeast Asia. And of course, you might reference Native Americans. There's also the two-spirited people are part of Native American culture. But the Hijras are technically, mostly they are biologically male, but homosexual and prefer to cross-dress. So occasionally intersex, occasionally undergo castration. But this is a rich and diverse community within itself. So there's many different distinctions, many different names used, depending on like your national and religious affiliation, whether you have intercourse with men and all these other things. But typically, when you see the Hijra in Indian films, they're used as comic relief. So this is also Dev Patel clearly wanting to give them a chance to play heroes as well.
Oh, that's cool. Right. And then they turn out to be the army that shows up to help him take down the rest of the bad guys at the end.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my friends said, Dev Patel really said, you have trans rights to throw these hands. But yeah, I also appreciated it was a fun little respite with the transformation montage where we find Alpha says that the temple tree has these toxic roots which work as a hallucinogen. And I looked it up and could not for the life of me find out what kind of tree this is supposed to be. So if anyone knows, please let me know.
Looked like a type of fig tree to me. You see a lot of these. They even used it in Foundation in the season 2 of Goyer.
But do fig trees have the toxic roots like this? I don't know.
I don't know I don't know if that's a story invention or visually it looked like one thing.
I don't know if it's a real plant or not. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, but so the purpose is to confront his childhood trauma, but this is also very typical superhero origin story. It's like his Superman Hanuman moment. So this is
transformation of the average into the extraordinary. Right. Yeah. And he goes through that crucible. And that's a pretty well understood pathway of I think even people are doing it now with modern ketamine treatments or, psilocybins and things like that, where we're challenging things that we're stuck on in our lives and using hallucinogenics is a tried and true method in human history for us to be able to deal with some parts of our psychology that aren't normally accessible. So,
right. Absolutely.
As well as the hero, the mythic hero story elements.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm classifying this as a superhero movie for the record.
Yeah. In a Daredevil, Echo kind of way, right? Where it's
more
not
grounded.
Exactly. It's not it's somebody who has superhuman will and willing to cross over into a new state of understanding the world.
Yeah, and I just found at the end of this sequence where he's betting on himself back in Tiger's ring just so satisfying. Alfonso's reactions win me over every time. It's like, is he the Fuji-sama of this film?
Right. Very funny.
But that brings us to the climax. So during Diwali, Baba's candidate, Adesh Joshi, is elected and their nationalist party celebrates at King's. Kid fights his way inside with improvised weapons and fireworks, where he is soon surrounded by Queenie's men. However, Alpha and her warriors arrive to help. Queenie attempts to shoot Kid, but is subdued and killed by Sita. Using Queenie's severed thumb to access the penthouse, Kid confronts Rana for a rematch and beats him to death in a brutal fistfight. Following this, Kid finally reaches Baba, who mortally wounds him with blades hidden in his padukas. Kid manages to kill Baba using the same blades, finally avenging Neela's death. Kid collapses from his injuries and reminisces about Neela and his devotion to Hanuman. So, yeah, I loved, of course, a lot of their favorite moment is Alpha and the Hijra showing up like avenging gods, and they even have like the blue masks of the gods.
which is it Vishnu?
Vishnu, but also I looked it up and it could be Shiva.
Great, but and that's where you get into this whole incarnation thing. I believe it is Vishnu.
But I looked up Shiva masks and they also are blue like this.
So yeah, the blue masks. So going back to Hindu mythology, we're talking tens of thousands of years of history in a polytheistic setup. And so things, as I mentioned before, get layered and mixed together. And the gods are interrelated, and depending on who you talk to, how they stack and connect and are avatars of each other. So there's a lot of Shiva stuff that's going on in here. At the same time, Hanuman, in one of the story iterations, he reveals himself to be Vishnu, who is I don't want to say Christ-like, but he is a deity who has come down to earth and incorporates themselves into bodily form, into a material human form, to lead people through these challenging moments and to provide all of the stuff that the heroicness that people need to overcome the situation. And oftentimes Vishnu is blue, but I believe you were saying that Shiva is also depicted as blue as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, just in the Ramayana,
do blue skin for gods in general. Yeah.
Yeah, and that one of Hanuman's reveals is that he has been Vishnu all along, and he's taken the form of Hanuman and really is a god inside.
Okay.
So
yeah, that makes sense. And also another analogy here is like the hiding of the blades inside these shoes that are
right.
So Baba Shakti says that he wears these shoes to prevent hurting other creatures when walking, which is most notably comes from Jain influence, not Hindu, but a different group in India that just go to extensive lengths not to harm any other life. Like you'll even see the more devoted sweeping the ground in front of them so they don't step on bugs. And yeah, so he's saying these shoes are so I don't harm any creatures, but then he's hiding knives in them.
Right.
Which is just a great analogy
which goes to the nature of the evil here, which is, as a populist, and he's using the crowds and he's using this idea that he's a spiritual guru leading people somewhere. He's got a forward-facing act, but inside he's really a selfish bad guy. And so the shoes, I think, perfectly encapsulate that spirit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess I found this the ambiguity of the conclusion more satisfying than you did. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, I guess because while watching the movie, I had one set of thoughts and feelings that weren't necessarily grounded to the larger story of the movie. So again, if this were not a passion project on the behalf of Dev, I think we would have absolutely seen the opening enough to know that this is this has the potential to roll out to be a John Wick like film franchise. Whereas this is a passion project, it's different. So I have a different appreciation of the ending now. So the story's concluded. It has a beginning, middle, and end. Story's over, done. Don't worry about IP, branding, studio, blah blah. That's fine. I'm good with it now.
But do we think in universe that kids' actions have a lasting effect, or is this like cutting off the head of the Hydra?
Yeah, that is a good question from a fantasy, not a fantasy, fairy tale standpoint. Living happily ever after the bad guy, the dragon, is slain. Do we then have a better world? I don't know. Or does the police chief's second in command step in? Does Alphonse take over his sister or his boss's position? Right, the evil still exists in the world. So this was just one evil, and it was just removed by revenge. Does it make things better? That's a whole political and moral discourse that's that other films have explored too, right? Do you make a pact with the devil because at least you keep things in place, as opposed to and maintain and control the evil, as opposed to now there's going to be chaos and upset in a real world, right? Not in a fairy tale, because a fairy tale is right. Dragon's dead, live happily ever after.
Yeah, so there is room for a sequel, but I want it to be decided for creative reasons and not. And I think with Jordan Peele and Dev Patel involved, they would absolutely not, just because there's never been a sequel to Get Out, because there doesn't need to be a sequel to
It
Get
doesn't
Out.
need to be. Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't want Station 12 from Station 11, right? It was a story. It was done, right?
Yeah.
That's not the point of it.
Right.
I think the thing that works from a mythology standpoint, though, is that Hanuman has lots of adventures. Vishnu appears in multiple forms and in multiple stories. So there's always a way to bring mythic elements into a modern tale. And I think that is a rich vein that Dev, I mean, he even did it with the Green Knight, right? He went into as the actor, playing in an Arthurian legend. Mythology, we get Marilyn in here on on the microphone, or Anthony even. Mythology is a rich place for our modern storytelling, so we can put on the modern trappings, but the stories themselves are varied and ever unfolding, because they're talking about the human experience writ large.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, well, I want to pick your brain for a few final thoughts, and we're also going to take some thoughts from members of our community.
Super.
Right after a quick final break. Okay, and we're back with our final thoughts. Now, David, I'm just going to throw some questions at you and then just rapid fire answers. So
I'll do my best.
Favorite action moments?
Favorite action moment was, I think, the opening fight montages. I walked into the theater just a little bit late and I didn't know what was going on. And I just had to go with it. And the ring fight scenes, I thought, were some of the coolest action in the thing. So yeah, anytime Monkey Man was fighting in the ring, that was my favorites.
Losing or winning, that was
losing or just fighting. Yeah, just in the ring fighting.
Okay. One of mine was actually just a moment of comic relief when he jumps into the window and it doesn't break.
Oh, right. He bounces off. Yeah, that was pretty funny.
We needed that moment. And of course, we haven't mentioned and this must have to do with his broken hand, why he came up with doing this, but where he stabs the guy with pushing the dagger in with his mouth.
Yeah, that was an interesting. I didn't know what to make of that. I'm still a little confused by it. It was very graphic. It certainly spiked the Pekila scale.
Yeah.
And I just have no idea what to do, how to process that. So it's just going to sit. It just is what it was. I can't comment.
No, I thought that was brilliant because it's something I haven't seen before, and it is. I think it was a way of dealing with the fact that he can only use one hand.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I also loved Sita's revenge. I love that she got to be the one to take out the woman who was, modern day enslaving her, basically.
Right.
And of course, when the Hydra show up in their goddess form, and my final favorite action moment was the fire face on the stove, where he just they showed this in the trailer, but they don't show how it actually goes, where he pushes the guy into the stove and then blasts the fire, so it goes around him.
Yeah, a lot of inventive fight choreography. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And so, okay, what were your biggest overall gripes about the film?
Too much and too long. So I think if you had cut it down by about half an hour, so it was an hour and a half film, and took out, I don't know what you would take out. I don't want to play armchair movie director, but it dealt with too many things. I think one of the things that we're seeing with Shogun is it's very narrowly focused and it's not sprawling a lot of sideways. And so it's that paradox of less is more. So we could have got the revenge story and the triumph of good over evil without packing in so much. I think if he would narrowed it down, and if you had narrowed it down, that would have also cut the runtime. So those are my two big gripes.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I talked about the camera needing to back up more sometimes.
Agreed.
I'm wondering if that's limitation of all the filming issues we talked about. But one thing I think they could have handled better is they did that dramatic monkey bleaching sequence, and then he just threw the mask away right away.
Yeah.
So I wanted him to have a more meaningful moment to take off that bleached mask and give us a longer with it. I assume it has to do with it being difficult to fight in or something, but
sure. Yeah.
I just think that they could have finagled that a little better.
Got it.
And yeah, the story had some frayed and unfinished edges, but I actually kind of really liked that about it. So I'm kind of sneaking in an extra compliment disguised as a gripe here.
Fair enough.
All right. Other film highlights?
Other film highlights: the tuk tuk, using the tuk tuk as a little bit of comic relief when they're walking down with all the fancy cars, and then here he is in this little like souped up tuk tuk. That was pretty good. And I think the first fight scene with the police officer, the setup for that, and getting him into position, that had my pulse pounding. I was on edge. And then when we had the fight and he didn't win, all of that was really, really had me and engrossed me in the film. And then the comic relief of the tuk tuk.
Yeah, okay. For me, it was the musical training sequence, the flashbacks, as I talked about. I love that sequence of the stolen purse being passed person to person. That really got me.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. Yeah, that was very good.
And yeah, the Alfonso banter and just some great needle drops that new plays on songs that I love that really worked well in the way that they were used. I thought that the score overall, I know they changed composers a few times. I don't know the story behind that, but I'm very happy with where they landed.
Cool.
So we talked about not necessarily needing a sequel, though I'm not anti-sequel, but if another Dev Patel action thriller comes out, will you go see it, David?
Yes. Unreservedly, yes.
Yeah. I'm in there too. Dev Patel was quoted as saying, in the movie, they say the pain will leave you once it's finished teaching you. And he says, like it's still teaching me, but I would go, but I would do this again.
Absolutely. And I like one of the motivations of him as a director is that people aren't hiring me for leading male role characters. So F it, I'm going to go make my own. And
yeah, exactly.
I love that. It is a encapsulation of the story in some aspects as well, where, you know, you can wait for somebody to come along or you can do it yourself. And sometimes that's the right choice. And I think he made the right choice here. And I'm glad Jordan Peele was there to,
that he saw it and watched it 3 times and bought it.
Yeah, exactly. And rather than, oh, Jordan Peele, he's made it, he's closing the door behind him. No, he's not only put the ladder down, but he climbed down there with Dev and like, brought him up to the next level. That's what we want in our filmmaking, right? Is creators helping other creators, whatever their backgrounds, but especially when they're underrepresented in the larger audience.
Yeah. Do you think this film will be remembered next year or have a lasting impact on the genre?
I think it'll have a lasting impact on the genre. I don't think it's gonna. It may make a splash when it comes to video on demand or streaming. They'll reactivate it, and I think it'll live as a low level cool cultural artifact. And I think it's going to have an impact in an indirect way. I think it hopefully will crack some windows and doors to allow some other creatives to get audience, to get opportunities, and to build audience where there might not have been some in other places. If you look at the shooting, we don't know the shooting budget, but if it's under 20 or 30 million shooting,
definitely.
This is a gorgeous looking film. This is amazing. And we didn't have a lot of CGI and explosions. And so qualitatively, it's a better film than a lot of what unfortunately Marvel has put out, where they're spending millions of dollars on CGI and special effects.
Right.
And we've got a better story for less. So,
right.
Take that lesson.
I also have to point to Everything Everywhere All at Once as one that just, because they had such a limited budget,
creativity.
Yeah, the creativity of how they create special effects with the editing is just that's what makes these films of the year for me.
And this is, and I've been on the mic before harping on this issue, which is we need corporations and businesses because that's an efficient way to manage all the financing and the distribution. We need people who are in the office doing these phone calls and spreadsheets and all of that kind of stuff and making sure that budget is being spent appropriately. That's all true. but we need to stop having studios lead the creative process of a film. So if you hire a creative and you give them a budget, and then you know that, oh, you've got a variance of 10 or 15% on top because, things happen, fine. You've got a couple of studio notes, fine. But damn it, let the creatives create. Let them cook. That is what we want. We want a vision of people, of human beings going through the process of storytelling.
Right. Not a formula that, is like,
not a formula. And that's unfortunately what's happened.
Movie. Yeah.
Exactly. And a number goes up tech bro kind of thought, like, just, give it to an AI and then give it to this visual AI thing and just push out the thing. It's empty. It's flaccid. It's flavorless, right? It's what's flavorful is when a human being is like Dev Patel is struggling with creation. Yeah,
I do think that this film is going to be remembered. I think it's going to become at least a cult classic, just because it's so personal, and you feel it's so personal. Whether or not you know the story of how it's made, you feel that it's doing something raw and different.
Which is something that a studio or AI sort of created thing can mimic, but there's an authenticity that I think would ultimately be missing because we do feel Dev on screen here, right?
Right. So we also heard some thoughts from some members of the Lorehounds community. So starting with friend of the pod, Duve71. He said, just back from an early evening showing. I can see why you enjoyed this one, Elysia. A rip-roaring rampage of revenge with heart. Definitely closer to The Raid than John Wick. Mrs. Duve's comment was, Dev Patel seemed to be wet in one form or another for the entire film.
It's true.
Yeah. Bloody, visceral, bone-crunching fights, but with a story that pulled in a lot of the troubles India is experiencing with minorities and the quote-unquote other suffering persecution. Hallucinatory quality to some of the scenes, with really effective use of disorienting camera swoops and zooms on ropes, apparently. As an ex-martial artist, I've always been more drawn to Hong Kong action than the slickness of Hollywood fights, though I am partial to the Wick franchise, and there was definitely some of that Hong Kong DNA in the fight choreography. A stonking debut for Dev Patel in directing. He really got the heat, the filth of life on the streets. I look forward to seeing what he'll come up with next.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with a lot of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ian said, did a Monkey Man double feature, both... did a Monkey Omen double feature, both good films. I'd rank Monkey Man slightly higher than John Wick as visceral, stylish action film. And yeah, the first Omen, I've been recently doing like a deep dive of Antichrist horror, and it's a good one. Of the ones that I've watched recently, I put it second, I think, after Rosemary's Baby.
Okay.
Maybe even before the first Omen. Yeah, before the original Omen.
Funny, I hadn't read this comment, and last night I put it into the chat with you and John that for Spooktober this month, I thought, maybe Omen, because there's 6 films and there's a lot of rich history there. That could be an interesting topic for our October Film Fest this year. But we'll see. But I've heard, it sounds like first Omen as a movie is doing not bad.
Yeah. So I'm watching all these films anyway, so I'm definitely down for that. Although I counter suggested also Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice is coming out in September. I'm excited for that.
Could be fun. We could still do a one shot on that, even if it's not our.
Right. True. And Adrian said, Monkey Man is fantastic, hits far more than it misses, and even when it doesn't quite reach what it's going for, you are rooting for the movie because Dev Patel gives everything in front of and behind the camera. It's gorgeous and bloody, and this is his first time as a director. Amazing things ahead. Also, I hate that I'm going to be living in a world in which Dev Patel is not the next James Bond, even if it's just for a one-off. Yeah, a lot of love for the idea of Dev Patel's James Bond, and I'm definitely on that bandwagon.
I think I could see it. I didn't realize that was chatter going on, but I could see it. That would be very cool. And with Indian and English culture are intertwined very deeply nowadays. And so having 007 he's got the physique and he's got, I think he's got the gravitas to do it. I would see it. I would definitely watch 007 with Dev Patel.
It seems like the next 007 is going to be Aaron Taylor Johnson, who's playing Kraven and played Pietro in the Avengers Ultron movie. But
Yeah.
I'm fine with that, but I would have been more excited about Dev Patel, to be honest.
Exactly. Give us a break, break mold a little bit, giving us, it's too late for, what's his name now? Luther.
For Idris Elba.
Idris Elba. There was a moment there.
I could have an older James Bond, let's
totally
mix
fine.
it up.
I think he said he's over
he's
it too.
done.
Yeah. It's just too painful to go through all the conversations and disappointing.
Right.
But break mold. Give us Dev Patel. I mean, Bond is a thing where you can constantly roll that.
We've had so many Bonds, we can shake it up a little bit. Yeah. I mean, people were so upset when Daniel Craig was cast because blonde Bond. Oh no!
Right.
Anyway, I'm with you, Adrian.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're about wrapped up?
Yeah. So that brings us to the end of the podcast. Do you want to give us our typical outro notes?
Sure. Happy to do so, and thanks for having me go see this film. You were very
I was very insistent.
Monkey Man. So again, if you are interested in supporting our community, because we're not just a couple of dudes on microphones, but we have a whole wide, fun, diverse global community. And all of that takes resources. And if you're interested in supporting that, a fun, nerdy place where we can actually have non-algorithmically led conversations and discovery. I've been recently hearing some stuff about what algorithms do to choices. And while it can help us find stuff, but there's also tending to driving down certain angles or quality issues.
Right. You just want to normalize everything so that the algorithm can process it.
Yeah. Whereas, with human discovery, the spark of joy and the spark of connection, I don't know that I would have gone to see Monkey Man, but Elysia said, David, go see Monkey Man so we can talk about it because I want to talk about it. Okay, great. And now I've discovered something and it's giving me new things, especially around Hindu mythology, which I used to be very interested in. So if you're interested in that kind of support in our community, check us out. Supercast is just like Patreon. It's a thing that we're going to be moving towards. It works better for podcasters. Go check us out there. Or if you're just comfortable with the Patreon model, that is also there. They're exactly the same in terms of the levels of support and all that kind of stuff. And for everyone who does support us and continues to support us, really, really thank you a lot. It means a lot to us. If you are interested in joining the conversation, no, it's not even real time. I mean, it's kind of like a modern forum. I know some people scratch their head at Discord. It's fine. Think of it as a forum where you get to see other people writing their comments real time, like old style bulletin boards, but then you can get into the real time community or conversations. It's a lot of fun. We've got a really lovely community there. We've got a great moderator team to help us keep the thing pointed in the right direction and functional on a regular basis, on a weekly, daily basis. We've got a fun group of people. We've got channels set up for all the different shows and projects that we've got going on. Right now we're covering Shogun. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And so it's been really great to have Nate and Abby, who, Nate studies Japan and Abby lives in Japan, and Davey Mack, who also lives there. They're giving real-time commentary and sharing a lot of interesting cultural stuff. So check us out on Discord. The link is in the show notes. Affiliate podcasts. We sponsor 4.5 podcasts now. I just looked at 4.5. It's pretty exciting. So it's not just John and I typically, but we've taken other people under because that's how we got our started is we wanted to do some stuff around Tolkien and Rings of Power. We got started, and now we're making sure that other people, if they want to get into it, have space and opportunity. So we've got Properly Howard Movie Review, which is Steve and Anthony. And Anthony's a podcaster for a long time. He has Electric Boogaloo over on the Bald Move Network. And with us, he's got Properly Howard Movie Review with his buddy Steve Osborne, who's a stand-up comic. And they do hilarious movie reviews of movies of the past. They just yesterday dropped their teaser, opening
their
podcast.
Draft. I love
their
draft.
drafting. Yeah. Yes, it was very funny. It was hilarious. They basically draft a number of movies. The theme for this season is going to be felonies and fugazis. So all crime related films. And the draft is pretty hilarious. So go check out Properly Howard Movie Review. Again, we have a channel set up for them on the Discord just for that. we're going to be doing, this is why we have 4.5 podcasts, because half a podcast is a Severance podcast with Anthony and Steve. Once season 2 comes out, John and I and Anthony and Steve, we're going to do a 4-person week-to-week coverage of that show. We're just waiting for dates. Elysia, you have a Woolshift Dust podcast, right. Which is not just limited to Woolshift Dust, but Beacon 23 and Dune and other sci-fi stuff.
So yeah, we are Beacon 23 season 2 just started, so you can check out in the Woolshift Dust feed. You'll find it's a prep for the season, including an interview with author Hugh Howey,
which was a really good interview. That was very cool to get the insights of a book writer who's dealing with translating his works onto screen. A lot of cool insights.
Yeah, because he's also executive producer on the shows that his books are adapted into. And yeah, we'll be continuing there also with Dune, and stay tuned for a Star Wars related announcement at the beginning of May.
Speaking of Dune, I think we're having a date. April 16th is when it's going to be on PVOD or whatever they call it, VOD or whatever, the pay on demand streaming thing.
VOD, yeah.
Yeah, VOD, video on demand. And I joked on the Discord that I think you and I, at least you and I, if not other people's, we need to do a full scene-by-scene breakdown of Dune 2, which I believe it was Sub-Zero who said, is this our first 4-hour Lorehounds pod? And I said, quite probably.
Marilyn pointed out that it would be the Earthsea books if you guys didn't divide them up. So maybe we'll have to divide this up too.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we can definitely, because I think just sitting in place for 4 hours recording would be a feat of would be quite a feat. Anyway, what else do we got? We have Rings and Rituals. Speaking of Marilyn, Marilyn and Dr. Sarah Brown of Signum University are doing a episode by episode analysis of season 1 of Rings and Power, and they're examining all of the rituals that made it on screen into that show. And then they're looking at the question of ritual in our daily human lives as well, sort of bringing it back around. So go check out that podcast. They're dropping an episode about every other week, and they just dropped episode 2. So go to that feed and subscribe and listen. Lastly, we have Aaron and Chase on Radioactive Ramblings, a Fallout podcast. Brand new podcast for the Fallout series, which is binging on Netflix, and it's about to drop. I think they're going to drop it a day early or something.
I think actually maybe today. It's coming out as we're recording. Yeah.
Okay. Netflix is going to Netflix, right?
Yeah.
So
wait, no, this is Amazon, which is why it's like,
why it's Amazon. Right.
Why are you doing a binge drop? Why?
Right. They don't know how to do much else. They can, but they
Amazon normally does weekly, so this is why it's like.
But they dropped Expanse as well. I think season 4. Anyway, whatever. That's streamers are going to stream. Yeah, annoying. Anyway, Chase and Aaron. Aaron is one of our Discord moderators and loves the Fallout lore. Chase, his buddy, he doesn't know as much, so it's that perfect sort of model of having the expert and the newbie. Yeah. Coming to it, and they will be dropping. I think they're going to chunk up the episodes, so they'll do like episode 1 and 2, and then they've got a breakdown. But their intro pod is out on that feed, so go subscribe and listen to that feed. Again, these are all affiliates; they all are participating in our community, and it's a lot of fun to have a big rambling group of folks talking about all kinds of cool stuff. In terms of us on the main Lorehounds channel, we are certainly covering Shogun right now. Episode 8, I watched last night. Wow. Just wow.
Heavy hitter.
Yeah. Very intense. So we're doing weekly coverage of that. John has been dealing with a bunch of family stuff. I've been dealing with some health things. You're the healthy one these days, Elysia.
Yeah. Who knew?
Who knew? And so we'll see who's on the mic on Friday for episode 8. But loving that show and having a great time on it. What else do we have? We've got the Fallout thing. We are catching up on a lot of things because March has been a crazy month. Beware the Ides of March. We've got a Halo podcast in the mix. We have a Star Wars, A New Hope in part of our Star Wars Film Festival. We've got a Silmarillion story in the mix. So stay tuned. We've got a hot, busy summer coming up with House of the Dragon, The Acolytes, The
Doctor
Boys, The Bear, Doctor Who. So I think we're going to get some one-shots. I started watching Ripley. That seems a really interesting show. I know Ron, our friend Ron, wants to do something on 3-body problems, so we may get that in line as well. So anything else that you can think of on the top of your head? You've got a Star Wars thing coming.
Yeah, I'll talk about Star Wars more later. Just FYI for the Beacon 23 fans, I think we're going to do the first 3 episodes together rather than the first 2, just because Luke has a book deadline and I have my mom visiting.
Oh, hey, fun.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So shout outs to our community supporters. First to our Discord server boosters, Opus the Machine, Gnarls, Aaron K, Tiller the Thriller, Dork of the Ninjas. And I've been missing this whole time. I didn't add it to the list. Doof71 has been boosting the Discord server for a while now. So I'm sorry, Doof. I missed you on there. The Discord server boosters just they lend a little support to our server, which gives our server more capacity, more bells and whistles, and makes a better community experience. To our lore masters, these are our top tier subscribers, be they on Supercast or Patreon. They're people who have stuck with us for a long time and make sure that our community has the resources it needs. So thank you to our lore masters. We always like to give them a quick shout out at the end of every pod. Samartian, Mark H, Michael G, Michelle E, David W, Brian P, Nick W, SC, Peter OH, Bettina W, Adam S, Nancy M, Duve71, Brian 8063, Frederick H, Sarah L, Gareth C, Eric F, Matthew M, Sarah M, DJ Miwa, Andra B, Kwang Yu, Deadeye Jedi Bob, Nathan T, Alex V, Aaron T, Sub-Zero, Aaron K, Dally V21, Gnarls, and always last but never least, Adrian. Thank you all again so very much. Elysia, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. This was
my pleasure.
This was definitely a passion project of mine.
Absolutely.
I'm the Dev Patel of this episode.
That's right. I got to honor that passion. That's what that's a big thing for Lorehounds, is our enthusiasm and our passion for these projects. So awesome. Good stuff. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and see you next time.
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.